20 years. I mean, where the hell does the time go? 20 years. I mean, it almost feels like another life. The Phantom Menace released on May 19th, 1999, and my birthday is May 23rd, so I was only a few days away from turning 13 when the movie came out. I remember the hype. I remember the buzz. I remember my friends and I being extremely excited, playing laser tag at Qzar and pretending we were all rebels and stormtroopers. I remember seeing The Phantom Menace twice in the theater. I remember my mom falling asleep. I remember being really pumped when the dazzling lightsaber fight started. I remember liking it, buying all the action figures, but always feeling like what I was watching was way different than what I was used to. I remember enjoying it, in chunks. But most of my memories from those theater viewings are really fuzzy. They're more memories associated with feelings rather than the physical act of being in the theater. I don't know why, I have a bad memory to begin with, but it's just really strange to me that I remember seeing a dollar theater rerun showing of Three Ninjas with my buddy Kyle more than I remember seeing The Phantom Menace in the movie theater twice. That's nothing against The Phantom Menace, that's just me wondering why my head hard drive is really slow and faulty. I do have some very vivid memories from my pre-movie hype and post-movie hype. There was a comic shop in a little mall called Titan Comics in Lawrenceville, Georgia, where I grew up. I remember the staff and customers talking about The Phantom Menace. I remember buying the box set of the Star Wars customizable card game at that comic shop. I remember the buzz, sifting through old Star Wars comics, looking at busts through the glass, being a little too young and shy to approach the conversations that the uber nerd employees and customers were having. After I saw the movie, I picked up the Phantom Menace soundtrack and listened to it a lot. Out of all the other Star Wars movie soundtracks, there's no question that Episode 1 is the soundtrack I've listened to more than any others. By that, I mean just listening to the soundtrack on its own. I'm not talking about listening to the music while I watch the movie. You know, just popping in the soundtrack individually. There's no question The Phantom Menace is the number one for me when it comes to listening time. Before The Phantom Menace, I would make little stop-motion animated videos with my family's big shoulder-mounted camcorder. And after The Phantom Menace, after I got that soundtrack, I still made those little movies, but now I knew how to layer some music on top of my VHS movies. And that's what I did. I'd layer the Phantom Menace soundtrack over my stop-motion animated movies. I remember these little animated movies being awesome, but I guarantee if I popped them in right now, I would laugh at how short and bad they are. Things always seem way more grand and great in your head years later, right? I need to dig through my parents' home movies and see if I can find those sometime. The Phantom Menace is my favorite Star Wars prequel. I've always said that it feels the most real, the most physical, the most tangible to me out of the three other Star Wars prequels. It feels the most Star Wars, whatever that means. Yeah, it's goofy. Yeah, it's super cringy at times. Yeah, it's way different than the used and abused grit I was used to with the original trilogy. But it's always held a special place in my heart, even when I was being incredibly cynical and playing up the dislike of it only a few years ago on this channel. When I saw the movie, I liked it. But with every year I grew older, I distanced myself from it, not intentionally, but it just kind of happened that way. And I would always revert back to watching the original trilogy, until eventually, I just never put my Phantom Menace VHS in. It just happened that way. It wasn't an intentional decision. And then eventually I would start a YouTube channel in 2011 and be super cynical and harsh, playing it up, being an asshole. So, to me, The Phantom Menace represents more than anything my childhood. The hype leading into the movie, the awe that my friends and I felt, the way it molded and shaped a lot of my opinions of the saga, the figures, the toys, the backstory. It reminds me of a simpler time. Laser tag and pinecone wars, reading Goosebumps in the backyard tent and roller hockey in the cul-de-sac. That's what The Phantom Menace kinda represents to me, a simpler time. And I'm sure if you were 12 or 13 years old when you saw the original Star Wars, you have that same nostalgic feeling surrounding that film as I do with this one. And I'm sure that'll be the same case for the sequel trilogy and this generation. So The Phantom Menace, one man's vision, director-writer George Lucas, an independent film in a way, one that had a really, really rough start, one that a major percentage of fans hated, but over time, people's appreciation has grown, and their cynical edges have smoothed. as have mine. So, how old were you when The Phantom Menace came out? Were you even born? Do you remember your first viewing? Do you remember if you liked it or not? Let me know in the comments section below. Happy 20th birthday, Phantom Menace. I am starting to feel really f***ing old.